It was December. The city was bustling with the Christmas spirit, colourful lights and the buzz of people hurriedly shopping. However, for Alec and Caroline, the festive atmosphere seemed distant. Married for 12 years, they were facing a crisis that threatened to shake the foundations of their union. Alec had always been a dedicated husband and a loving father. With a degree in business administration, he had been working for a multinational company since he graduated. Caroline, his wife, was the same age and was an elementary school teacher. Their story began at university, when an unexpected romance resulted in a pregnancy. Determined to take responsibility, they got married while still students. It was a simple wedding, without the grand celebration Caroline had always dreamed of. The honeymoon, planned for someday, never actually happened. In the following years, amidst diapers and baby bottles, they managed to graduate. Life wasn't easy, but they were happy. A few years later, their second child came along, completing the family they loved so much. They lived in a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, with a backyard where the children loved to play. However, in recent months, something had changed. Alec, always so present, now seemed distant. It all started when a management position was announced at the company. Alec's main competitor was Russell, his college and work colleague. From that moment on, a silent competition arose between them. Alec began working overtime, volunteering for every possible and impossible project. Weekends, once filled with family outings and picnics in the park, were now spent with Alec locked in his office, immersed in spreadsheets and reports. Caroline watched this change with growing concern. The children, aged 11 and 8, constantly asked why their father no longer participated in family meals, or why he was always on the phone during the rare moments he was at home. On a Saturday afternoon, while the children played in the backyard, Caroline decided to talk to her husband. She knocked softly on the office door before entering. "Alec, can we talk for a moment?" Without taking his eyes off the computer screen, Alec replied, "Not now, dear. I'm finishing an important presentation." Caroline sighed, feeling a mixture of frustration and sadness. "Alec, you said the same thing last week, and the week before. The children are missing you." Finally, Alec looked at his wife. There were deep circles under her eyes, signs of accumulated fatigue. I know, but don't you understand? This promotion can change our lives. Think of the opportunities we can give the children." "They don't need opportunities, Alec. They need their father," Caroline replied, her voice slightly trembling with emotion. The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Alec's cell phone. It was work, of course. Caroline left the office, leaving her husband immersed in yet another business call. Days passed and the situation only got worse. Alec began to constantly compare himself to Russell. "Caroline, do you believe that Russell is moving to a bigger house? How can he afford it if he has the same salary as me?" he commented once with a tone of poorly disguised envy. On another occasion, upon arriving home, Alec announced, "Caroline, we need to change the car." Surprised, Caroline replied, "But Alec, our car is great. It's spacious, perfect for taking the kids to school and even giving rides to their friends." "But it sends the wrong message. It doesn't convey authority," Alec insisted, to Caroline's total confusion. "What message, Alec? Our car needs to safely transport our family, not send any message," she argued, beginning to understand what was behind that sudden need for change. Days later, she discovered that Russell had bought a sports car. Christmas was approaching, and with it, the family traditions that had always been so important to everyone. Setting up the Christmas tree, usually an event full of laughter and joy, with the children helping to hang the ornaments, was a sad moment this year. Alec was absent, busy with yet another project he had voluntarily taken on. Caroline watched the disappointed faces of the children as they decorated the tree. "Where's Dad?" asked the daughter, her small voice full of sadness. "He's working, dear, but I'm sure he would love to be here," Caroline replied, trying to sound convincing but failing even to her own ears. That night, after the children went to bed, Caroline confronted Alec again. You missed the Christmas tree assembly, Alec. The kids were devastated. Alec, looking genuinely sorry, promised to make it up to them. I'll make an effort to be more present, Caroline. How about we go out for dinner tomorrow night? Just the two of us? At your favourite restaurant? Caroline hesitated, but eventually agreed. Maybe it was a chance to reconnect with her husband, to make him see how much his absence was affecting the family. The next day, Caroline got ready for dinner. She chose a blue dress that Alec always complimented, did her hair, even put on some light makeup, and wore her favourite perfume. She was ready and excited when the phone rang. Dear, I got stuck here at work and I'll be late for our dinner. Take a taxi to the restaurant and I'll meet you there. Alec's rushed voice sounded on the other end of the line. With a sigh of resignation, Caroline did as suggested. At the restaurant, she sat at the reserved table and decided to wait for her husband before ordering. The minutes dragged on, and there was still no sign of Alec. After an hour of waiting, the restaurant manager approached with an apologetic expression. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but if you are not going to order, we need to ask you to vacate the table. We are at full capacity and unfortunately, this table has a reservation for the next few minutes. I'm really sorry, he said, trying to be as polite as possible. With a heavy heart, Caroline stood up and walked towards the exit. She was about to call for a taxi when Alec arrived, breathless and dishevelled. Hi, my love. Sorry for the delay. It's just that... He began to explain, but Caroline interrupted him. You don't need to say anything else, Alec. We've already lost our reservation at the restaurant and I already know you had to stay for another meeting, she said, trying to control her tone so as not to draw the attention of those around. You seem to dislike that I work to provide the best for you and our children. You knew that Russell's kids are studying at an international school and... Alec started but was interrupted again. Always Russell, Caroline said, exasperated. Alec, our children don't need a new school. They need their father. We don't need to move house. We love our neighbourhood. We don't need a new car or anything else. We need you, Alec. We need you at the school presentations, at the soccer matches, in setting up the Christmas tree. Alec's frustration exploded at that moment. You seem like you're never satisfied, Caroline. Don't you understand that I need to work hard to get to the top? You would never understand, he said harshly. Then, without thinking, he added the words he would later bitterly regret. You almost ruined my future when you got pregnant while we were still at university. The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline looked at her husband as if seeing him for the first time, shocked by the cruelty of those words. In that tense moment, they were interrupted by an unusual figure, a man dressed in a cheap Santa Claus costume, carrying a bucket full of roses. A rose for a couple in love? Hey, boss, how about buying a rose for your wife? The man asked, smiling beneath the fake beard. Alec, still nervous from the argument, replied rudely, Get out of here, you bum. Don't you see you're interrupting? Caroline looked at her husband, horrified by his behaviour. Alec, look at yourself mistreating people on the street. I can hardly recognise you. You've lost your way. Our family needs Alec, but the old one, not this person you've become. With tears in her eyes, Caroline got into the family car that the valet had just brought around. She took the wheel and drove off, leaving Alec alone on the sidewalk. Alec stood there, stunned by what had just happened. It was then that he realised he was without his wallet, which he had left in the car, and his phone was out of battery. Unable to call a taxi or even catch a bus, he decided to walk home, a journey of approximately 1 hour. As he walked through the streets illuminated by Christmas decorations, Alec reflected on the argument with Caroline. Despite being lost in his thoughts, he immediately noticed that someone was following him. Looking back, he saw that it was the same man dressed as Santa Claus who had tried to sell him flowers earlier. Are you following me? I'm not interested in buying anything, said Alec, still annoyed. The man smiled kindly. I'm not following you, sir. I'm just walking home. This is my way. The man's friendliness disarmed Alec. Hey, I'm sorry for my rudeness. I was nervous because of my wife, he apologised. Santa Claus accepted the apology with a peaceful nod. Alec, initially hesitant, soon realized that the company of that unknown and unusual man was oddly comforting. As they walked side by side through streets decorated with Christmas lights, Alec began to vent, without even realizing how much he was talking. He talked about the pressure to surpass Russell, the constant comparison he made between his achievements and those of his colleague, and how it had slowly taken over his life, distancing him from his family. The man in the Santa Claus costume listened patiently, without interrupting, only nodding silently. When Alec finally paused, perhaps expecting some comment or judgment, the man sighed deeply and adjusted his red hat before removing it. You know, wearing this outfit and selling flowers wasn't exactly what I had imagined for myself. There was a time when I had a stable job. I was a sales manager at a large company, led a dedicated team, and was part of something that filled me with pride. But then, something changed. A young, energetic employee began to stand out. He was good, maybe even better than me at some things, and it wasn't long before praises for him started coming in. Alec felt a shiver upon hearing those words, as if the man were narrating a version of his own story. I should have seen that as an opportunity to learn, to improve, continued Santa Claus, his eyes fixed on a distant point, as if reliving the events. But fear, insecurity, and especially pride spoke louder. I spent sleepless nights thinking about how he could take my place. It became an obsession, and then I made mistakes, big mistakes. Alec was completely focused. Each word seemed to echo in his mind like a warning. I started to sabotage his work. I took his projects and presented them as if they were mine. When that wasn't enough, I altered reports and distorted numbers to make him appear less competent. At the time, I thought I was protecting my place. But of course, the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. When my actions were discovered, I was fired. Not only that, my name became synonymous with dishonesty in the market. I was sued, and the little I had was lost in legal costs. He paused and looked at Alec, who was frozen, processing the story. My wife couldn't handle what I had become. She left, and I, who had everything to have a decent and happy life, was left with nothing. Today I sell flowers because that's what's left, but I do it with honesty. Each petal is a reminder of what I lost due to my own blindness and greed. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the distant sound of laughter and Christmas music coming from somewhere. Alec didn't know what to say. He felt a knot in his chest, as if fate had placed that man in his path to show him what could happen if he continued in the direction he was heading. Santa Claus looked at Alec again, this time with a kind look. Be careful. Sometimes, in the race to reach the top, we end up leaving behind everything that really matters, and when we realize it may be too late to turn back. Have you ever wondered how far you are willing to go to achieve your goals? Said Santa Claus, his voice calm. He looked directly at Alec. There is a line, Alec. A line between what is right and what is wrong, between healthy ambition and the despair that blinds us. And you need to decide if you are about to cross it. Alec felt the impact of those words like a direct blow to the heart. For a moment he remained silent, absorbing the unexpected advice from that stranger. Listen to your wife, Santa continued in a softer tone. She is not against you, Alec. She just wants to remind you of what truly matters. There are things money can never buy. And if you're not careful, you might end up losing a treasure that's already yours, exchanging it for something that in the end is empty and superficial. Alec realized they were in front of his house. He stopped, looking at the facade illuminated by the Christmas lights that Caroline and the kids had put up without him. Santa, by his side, began arranging the remaining flowers into a small makeshift bouquet, his movements calm and precise, as if he were handling something precious. Give this to your wife, he said, handing the bouquet to Alec. It's not just an apology, Alec. It's a gesture to remind her, and yourself, of what's truly important. Reclaim your greatest treasure before it's too late. Alec accepted the bouquet with a nod, feeling a wave of gratitude for that stranger who, in just a few minutes of conversation, managed to open his eyes. Wait for me here. I'll get some money inside to pay for the flowers, he said. With his heart racing, Alec entered the house. He found Caroline sitting on the living room sofa, her eyes red from so much crying. When she saw him, she stood up, ready for another argument. But before she could say anything, Alex stepped forward, offering her the bouquet of roses. "Caroline, I'm sorry. Truly sorry," he began, his voice choked with emotion. "I lost my way. I let myself be carried away by ambition and envy. I forgot what really matters." Caroline took the flowers, looking at her husband with a mix of surprise and caution. "You're right," Alec continued. "Our children don't need an expensive school or a new car. They need their father. And you, my love, don't need a husband obsessed with work and status. You deserve the man you fell in love with, the one who promised to be by your side at all times." Tears rolled down Caroline's face as she listened to her husband's words. "I promise you here and now that I will change. I'll be the father and husband you deserve. No more unnecessary overtime, no more weekends locked in the office. From today on, my priority is you, my family." Caroline sobbed and threw herself into Alec's arms. They hugged tightly as they hadn't done in months. "I love you," Alec whispered in his wife's ear. "Forgive me for having been lost for so long." After a long hug, Alec remembered Santa Claus waiting outside. "Wait here. I need to thank someone," he said, grabbing his wallet. But when he opened the front door, Santa Claus had disappeared. Alec looked both ways down the street, but there was no sign of the man. He went back inside, puzzled. "Who were you looking for?" Caroline asked. Alec smiled, a sense of peace washing over him. "An angel, I think. An angel dressed as Santa Claus." In the days that followed, Alec devoted himself to keeping his promise. He restructured his routine, limiting hours at the office and prioritizing time at home. He started having lunch with his family whenever he could. The weekends, once dull and quiet, became lively with trips to the park, family movie sessions, and even a puzzle-building competition that made the children laugh until their stomachs hurt. One day, while observing the Christmas tree, Alec suggested, "How about we start from scratch and redecorate everything together?" The children shouted with joy, and Caroline, with a gentle smile, helped organize the ornaments. Alec climbed onto a stool to hang the star at the top, to the applause of the children. On Christmas Eve, the house was filled with warmth and joy. The lights of the Christmas tree twinkled, illuminating the radiant faces of the children as they enthusiastically tore through wrapping paper. Caroline laughed beside Alec, both embraced on the couch, watching the scene. In a moment of distraction, Alec looked out the window, and among the twinkling lights decorating the street, glimpsed for a brief moment the silhouette of a man wearing a red hat. He paused with a light heart, and a serene smile illuminated his face. A comforting warmth enveloped him, as if it were a silent reminder of the Christmas miracle that had restored his family. Alec reflected on how sometimes God sends angels to help us, and how these angels might appear in the most unexpected places and forms, even dressed in a cheap Santa Claus costume, selling flowers on a December night. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.